Yeah, sure, sure. Thanks, Kobin. Thanks for inviting me for this session. Uh, this is actually the publishing your first journal article is quite enunciating, I feel, as when we start our professional life in the beginning as a optometrist, we usually focus on the clinical aspects, and a little bit we lag in giving a fine touch to the publications. So I do feel that optometrists in the professional career, uh, definitely there should be an excellence in the clinical part, but should I think we should be inspired and try to attempt to have a kind of a beginner publications. I feel it's a quite rewarding task actually. So sometimes the publishing papers could be quite daunting at the beginning, and there might be full of fear and trepidations. But in other side, it is actually exciting too, especially publish the first part of first paper. So like when we get the paper acceptance, we just feel like we did some sort of achievements. So in that terms, it is quite exciting. I put my objective to discuss an experience-based process of writing a first journal article, as I mentioned earlier. So I would just like to keep on moving. Now, uh, often in academic context, the phrase publish or the perish is widely used to refer to the pressure or the pressures on academics to publish their work frequently and constantly to obtain like employment and advance their career. Publish a research paper. Uh, like we said that technically to share research findings and discoveries and to contribute to the science. This is a technical term, but the real sense in practical aspect at the current scenario, we are doing publishing paper to get job, to get funding for our research, funding for our project, to get promotions in our job, maybe in services or any places, to get recognition of the work what we do and to share our achievements. So that is also one of way that to show our achievements. So there are other reasons also, like we have received so many uh, uh, comments on the so many reasons for the publications. So these are some of the listed, um, some of the technical and practical aspects we normally see at the publication. So the next question is then, do you have an interesting story to tell? After all, we need to tell a story. But the storytelling means not like the fiction story with full of surprise and dramas. This is a story which is scientifically presented, it is coherently presented, it is interrelated to our work, to our job, or maybe to our research questions specifically when we speak. So while we means telling the story should not be very big and great. Normally, what we think is when we tend to be a little bit reluctant that I may not have a big story, big picture of my project. This is very small project. We might think that, but we do not need necessarily a big and great story. We need a story that enough to be exciting and compelling, so this story would be enough. So this is the art how we present our story so that the reader get interested and we could provoke thought on them. So definitely, but ideally it should be a novel. This is the prerequisite. So novel means that should have some sort of new ideas, maybe new concept, new findings. It might be that should be significant and that might be insightful. So we do not need a big picture, so we can simply say that less is more. So less story can also reveal a big picture. Next is then where we to publish. If you look at if you do the internal Google, if you Google, we might find thousands of journals. So sometimes we might get confused that which journal is acceptable for the which journals are acceptable for the our particular paper. So in that context, we need to select a particular journal or maybe a list of journals prior to uh, um, prior to writing or prior to publishing. So that would fit into our based on our order of preference, our relevance and quality of journals. So preference, relevance, and quality of journals. I just keep at the moment quality of journal aside. Preference and relevance means like if we are doing subject, there are many areas of the specialities like optometry, ophthalmology, vision, psychology. So this sort which area we are targeting. So we can select that based on that. Then our research is clinical or the experimental or medical or epidemiological. So in that way also we can select some journals, maybe based on the disease like pathology, vision therapy, vision, contact lens. So there are many ways we look at the relevance and preference to the journal. And regarding the quality of journal, definitely quality matters a lot. But my advice is that when we start writing a first draft of the journal, I would rather prefer not selecting a very high and top ranked journals for the first publications. So maybe a reasonable level of quality might be worked. So in like if you look at the journals and optics, you might hardly find high impact journals, but uh, low impact journal also could have high quality yielding. So the chances of acceptance uh, could be high even if there is a low quality, but it has a very good impact. So we should be a little bit tactful while selecting the quality at the beginning. But the main important thing is that we need to search that to ensure an article which we are writing was not published on specific topic in the past. So that we should make sure. If it is already published, and there is a high chance of rejections and may not get the uh, publishers' attention. Sorry, the editor's interest and peer reviewers' interest. So that is the first contact where even if we have a good story, they may not like, and there is a chance of rejection. So authors' priorities for the journal selection, there are in number of key factors and marginal factors we consider. But at this moment, I would just like to say a little bit about impact factors, access to the target audience, and open access. So I think the impact factor, as I said, the quality of the journal is primarily measured in impact factor, though it is not the absolutely indicator in the present days. There are so many ways of measuring the quality of the published paper. So what is impact factor? Impact factor is just like that there is a paper published, and we look at the 2 years, the number of citations in a couple of years. So that published in a particular journal, an average of all the published paper, we derive the average of all these citations, and that gives the impact factor. So normally high impact factor is considered a very good journal. But in optometry and ophthalmology, if you look at the optometry journal specifically, like clinical experimental optometry and vision science, ophthalmic and physiological optics, clinical and experimental optometry, journal of optometry, they are as such not high impacted, but it is well received in the scientific community. So these journals are not bad, just having low impact factor, but they are very good journal. The next is the access to the audience. So the paper, like when we publish paper because many people read it, and that is the what we call accessibility. So this access audience, normally we look at the audience. Like if we are publishing a paper on accommodation, we definitely like to look at the people who are working on that areas, and the journal also publishing more paper on that areas. So we will look at that audience perspective also. So we need to select tactfully that who would be the audience in that case. And the open access. Open access means these papers are freely available. so can be accessed any from anywhere, any places by anybody. So that means that increase the readability. That's what we want, that at initial stage, that our paper's been read by as many people as possible. Yeah. Now coming to how to write paper. So we just look at some of the we have I just give a small a brief background about the journals. Now our main topic is how to write a paper. So when we write a paper, uh, when like we have specific, if we have specific thing in mind that we are going to write a paper for a specific journal, then we might, it's worth visiting the journal's website, and that we can find in the author's information sections that um, the I mean the guideline, the requirement, what should be the uh, paper's design, like formatting, referencing, the length of the article. These all we can find from the author's information sections. The basically the language. This is the most important. Normally in publishing a paper, uh, the language should be. It is considered that language should be clearly. I mean the manuscript should be clearly written with list of the flaws, and if there is a lot of grammatical mistakes and things are not clearly mentioned, even without reviewers reviewing it, immediately it might get rejected. So this is important. But we need to follow specifically which type of pattern of English they are preferring, the journals are preferring. We might need to look into that. Obviously the reference style, there are many conventions of referencing, but still most of the referencing in the journals are common with some minor changes. So it's might worthwhile to look at the referencing style, so that we can look from the author information section. Then obviously the formatting, these all we can find from the author's information sections. um, like like when we, the important thing I would like to share in share what I've experienced is when I look at the author's information sections, actually in the journal they have given mm, vast number of the information they give, and sometimes we just may get lost, the information what we need may not be able to extract. So make sure that if we are looking at the particular section, we can just quickly scroll down to that sections and read the informations, because that information might contain 40-50 pages author's informations, which we do not like to read top to bottom. So we just scan and look at the sections where we are looking for. So like if we are looking for the manuscript designing, like the structuring the paper, we just look into that. If there is an ethical issue, just look at the ethical issue at the time. But at the time, I do not recommend to go through each and every instructions that we can find in the journal site. So normally, if we had done this some sort of project like in bachelor or master degree, that is what my primary focus of today's presentation is. That means we already have some sort of prepared draft. So in that case, we might seek the advice from the experienced academician or editor or the senior colleagues that what sort of things can be done so that the paper is publishable. What could be what way or the pattern we should write the manuscript so that it has get a high chance of acceptance. So this we can take this advice from the seniors, academic experts, and the editors, of course. And after the article to conform to the journal's guideline. So then once we have a prepared, prepared project draft or the thesis draft. So in that case, I think it is a bit easier. Just we need to go to the journal and look at the pattern, and we can just conform to that pattern. So it's not tedious or difficult to alter from your original thesis to the journal pattern, because it's already in the structure. You just need to organize them. So that can be done very quickly, actually. So like in this point, the one more thing I would highlight is uh, about the writing a first draft. A first draft is the is your thought and ideas, not the errors and corrections. So when we prepare a first draft, normally, ideally, what we should do is we divide the article into each sections. These sections we are briefing in the coming we just for in the coming presentations in the coming sections. Like we just divide them into sections so that we can write in particular section at a time, because we cannot sit all days and maybe a week just to write the paper. So when you take a break, you may not continue from you may not get lost that from where you should start. So we always better to have sections and start on particular section at a time. And in the first draft, when we like first draft, we do not consider about grammatical errors, any sort of errors, grammars, any punctuations. We just write our thought, so that, and this can be crafted later on by doing edits. So we need a multiple edits, multiple time edits before it is ready, and before it is ready and it is final to be submit in the journal. So in the first draft, I recommend you just focus on presenting your ideas and thought, and do not care about any grammar and errors. And the other thing is, in the first draft, always it's better to start with the easy sections. Like we have divided sections like introductions, methodology, abstract, like result, conclusions, discussions, so many things. But always better to start with easy. So this is one we have to find out which section is easier. The practically speaking, writing the method sections and result sections are quite easier than the introduction and the discussion sections. So I always prefer to start with the methods or result when we have a documents like the thesis or any sort of prepared document is ready. So I always prefer to do that. And then subsequently I build on writing in further in the other sections. And I write abstract at the last. This is the, even if it is appear first, it is always advisable to write at the last. Now, coming to the components of the paper, there are many components. These components, the component which I show is ideally most of the journals follow the pattern. So I can say that more or less follows this same pattern for the original papers. So like title, we begin from the title. That normally reflects the main content and ideas. Author sections, that recognizes the significant contributors. Abstract, that briefly summarize the key information. I'm just reading this slide now at the moment. Keywords, ensures the article is correctly identified in abstracting and indexing services. That means we use keywords to find out that article. And we need to keep the keyword, we need to select the keyword in such a way that it hits, when it hit, that finds the article. That means that increase your chance of visibility. Then introductions explains the usually rational and problem and shows where is the gap in the knowledge. In method, explains the approach undertaken to answer the problem or the gap. And results, that describes the what was found. Discussions discusses the implications of the findings. Acknowledgements provide support. Acknowledgement recognizes the people or the organization who have provided support. References recognizes previously published work. Then appendices, these are the supplementaries that provide supplement and data and the expert reader. So we will go one by one and we will try to extract uh, how we should plan them. So I begin from the title. So a title should be normally that describe the content of the paper clearly and precisely. So this title can be presented as a key findings. You can put title the key findings, like uh, like if you are doing the study on myopia, you can straightforward say that uh, like myopia is highly prevalent in older age children, something like that. But that should be very much compelling and thought-provoking, so that the readers, once look at the title, tend to read the whole paper. So like we can put methods, the like any of the tests we use, we can directly put about test. like suppose if we want to say that IUP, we are measuring IUP and we are finding some interesting result, we can directly say which method of the IUP measurement we use. We can directly put as a title. We can also put the conclusion of the studies or overall, and we need to make sure that that reflects the whole ideas of the paper. And normally we do not use any abbreviation and jargon in this case, and we tactfully select the keywords to frame a title so that again when keywords are hit, our articles are visible in front. Then authors listing, that as I mentioned, it's only include those who have made an intellectual contributions to the research. So there are many ways of measuring intellectual contributions, and some of the criteria which are listed or populated in the authorship criteria in the journals are the conceptions of the concept or conception of the ideas, study from designing the studies, data analysis, interpretation of findings, writing a paper, a critical revision of the papers. Normally the supervisors, the co-authors, main senior, they normally do, and final approval. So merely normally what we assume that the data collection will satisfy the authorships. So just collecting the data may not satisfy the authorship. Hi, Kapil. Hi. Is it okay?
Sir, it's fine.
Yes, sir. Yes, it's okay, sir. Yes, sir. It's fine.
Okay, thanks. Coming to the abstract, as I mentioned that this is the last to write, but presented first. So this briefly summarizes the problem. Normally we present as a purpose or aim in the abstract. Then we put the methods, results, and conclusions. The word count we can view from again the author's guideline. Normally 200-250 words are, and we normally need to write in 200 to 250 words. And normally we present key ideas and findings. And in the keywords, sorry, just a minute. Yeah, because like in abstract, normally when we write the purpose, normally ideally, I normally prefer to select only put 20 to 25 words for the purpose or aim or problem. Methods, I would like to a little bit elaborate methods, so I just prefer to use 75 to 100 words. And for the result, similarly 75 to 100 words, and conclusion maybe about 25 to 50 words. So I try to structure in that way, and I just pick up the key like if I want to write the method, I just select key ideas, the process what I did in the as a keywords, and I frame the methods in the abstract. But this is at the end only, so I'm just emphasizing that. Coming to introductions, this seems easier one, but it's a very hard task to write introductions because you have to do the even you have ready document like your thesis or the project report. At the time when you think you are writing the paper, there might be many papers coming up with new ideas, so we have to do the literature search. So it consumes a little bit of time. And usually the introduction provides the contextual background, like the problem and issue being investigated. Like we said, what is the problem or issue in this context? And then the background also explains the problem, not only the issue and raise the issues, but also explain the problem, where that usually states where is the gap in knowledge. And the reasons for conducting the research, obviously. Then why is this study important? So we give emphasis on that. And then definitely we identify the questions we are answering here. And like I mentioned, the challenge and the extend current findings. Challenge and extend current findings. So we normally extend, this is understood, extend the current findings that connect to the research problem or ideas we are going to explore. But challenge means sometimes the studies might have some previous findings might have limitations or drawbacks. We can challenge that. We can also challenge that, and we can justify that why we are going to do this, why we did this study. So we can put in that way also. So this basically covers the ideas of experiments, hypotheses, or any of the research question and experiments at this point. Coming to method, so we normally write methods in just in our details that enough to understand and replicate the research. That means if somebody wants to see that the research what we do, can they do with the same process? So we want to make sure that it is clearly, concisely written, and somebody wants to review this, can be done. So we do not exaggerate and put a lot of informations. We just put just enough informations. And we normally explain the study procedures in a chronological order as long as it is possible. Like for this example, like if we are doing a qualitative and quantitative study together, like I just give you the computer vision syndrome. One person has done the computer vision syndrome studies and took the data on the visual problem side with some sort of questioning and also did the clinical test. Then we need to think now which should be the prioritize and put in the chronological order to do the two data collections. Either we should start from the qualitative data or quantitative data. So I mean from the question or clinical test or clinical test to questions. And in the research, normally we should follow a pattern throughout the pattern in each of the samples. Each sample collections, if we're following with the collecting question, collecting data from the questionnaire first, then clinical data, we should follow in that pattern. So that should be the consistent, I mean. And in when we describe the methods which is already been done, we normally cite them. So that also reduces the burden of writing full details because the citation means that can be reviewed in that citations how it is done. And this methods usually includes all dimensions of data that is pertinent to the answer the research question, like its observations, what observation we did, like records, maybe clinical records, metadata, photos, videos, information tests, whatever is there, that all includes and that presents the main ideas. And this also includes the issues related to validity, accuracy, criteria, normality years. And these are not mandatory in all cases. It depends upon the type of studies. So this is just an idea I'm sharing. So this method normally to make it interesting to the reader, what we can do is we can present the method, the process in a flow diagram, maybe in a table form also. So this way we can make it interesting and more easy to read, and people often like that kind of presentations. Now next, coming to result, normally in the result we shows the findings in a logical sequence, answering our hypotheses or research questions or our objectives. So like when we do the studies, the main objective are derived from the many small specific objectives, and meeting the each of the specific objective in the result ultimately lead to the main meeting the idea of the main objectives. So this way also we can plan. And the but the results should be presented very concisely. We should not present all of the findings. Like normally, I just give you example. Uh, like when we describe the demographic data, we said male, female, also all the level of the like socioeconomic data. Just I give you an example. So like somebody said, this person is farmer, this person is student, this person is that. We do not need to explain all of them. We just need to explain key finding, what that actually that result says. So key, just few of the key sentences we select. We do not write whole of the findings in this result. And this is expected to be again novel. Result should be a novel that should reflect the new ideas, and it also should better with the clear and revealing figures. So that means we can present result with a very good figure and tables. So it would be self-explanatory. So people often do not tend to read whole articles. So if we present result in a revealing way, like with using finger or tables, people often like to read those results. So we can think about that, how we can make it is revealing, presenting the finger and tables. So this should be sufficiently descriptive, not the overstated. This is the important thing. And usually when I write the results, I prefer to write maybe around 1500, 500 words, just 500 words. Methods need little bit elaboration normally. So methods might goes 800 to 1200 words for a typical original manuscript, which accept up to 3000 words of paper. And coming to discussion and conclusions. So in discussions, we actually explain what that result means. We do not repeat the result, but we say that what that result means. We do not recite or reiterate the same result. So then we describe what the result means. And we also indicate how the results are relevant and relate to the expectations and to the literature previously cited papers. So for this example, like in the result, we say that the myopia is more prevalent in old. Myopia is seen in old ages by suppose say 25%, and this is the highest percentage. So in the discussions, the same idea, we normally do not write same idea. We write that the myopia is more prevalent in all ages. We can begin from that statement. So in the result, we have said that myopia in the older age group or specific age group had maybe 35% or 40%. That shows that myopia is more in older age. So same idea we can present in discussion, but not with the same finding. We extract that information from that finding and we put in the discussions, and that started discussions with what is the idea about that in the previously published paper. And the same we can carry with the different sort of analysis with the different indicators or different factors associated with myopia. And this way we can make it more interesting and unique. So basically, uh, we need to think that how the research has moved the scientific knowledge forward. So that means it should be uniquely presented, and from what sort of further interventions or what sort of further studies can be done, and what new ideas or concept has been added, we need to focus that. So we look at the result overall. What is new? We just need to find out what is new, not in the literature. Once we find out, that's done. We just need to pick that and highlight those parts. So that shows uh, that attracts or connect uh, reader immediately. So we can highlight that, and maybe we can use as a title of the project also, of this manuscript also. So we can think in that way. So coming to the references, it seems like this is the end of the slides. When we normally read the presentation, reference means end of the slide. Here the reference means it's a very tactful task actually. Referencing convention has different rules, there are different style of referencing. I'm not going in detail about that. It might cover another presentations, but I just would like to give you a brief idea of the referencing the paper. So normally the referencing means acknowledging the contribution of the published work, and any information is that not original, that means that is not owned by us, should be recognized as a citation. And this needs to be need to refer to the journal for the intake citations and the listing of the journals. That means uh, intake citation means in the in the manuscript itself we need to give numbering or sort of intakes, maybe the authors. So it depends on the type of the referencing convention we use. So we need to follow that, and this can be found in the author's guideline again. And the type of listing of the journals, we used alphabetical order or numbering system, so we just need to follow the convention basically. But the importance of referencing is not so easy actually, that different authors use, different people use different techniques referencing the paper. So like this basically I would like to share two broad ideas in a referencing. First is we just write our main ideas. This is usually the expert and experienced people does. We just write ideas and we comment and elaborate or like in discussions. And later on, each of the sentence, each of the ideas, we just look at these ideas and we refer them. So those people who are very much experienced, only they can do that because they can find out the article easily and which source that could belong, and this and that idea actually originally from which source it has came. So it is easy. The second is the normally what I prefer is note making. So as I read, I just make a note and write the source. So this is again, I usually do this again by two ways. I can do it two ways. If the title is too lengthy, when I start writing this note, if title is short, I just pick up title and put the different color, and in each note I just put attach that title. If the title is too lengthy, I just prepare the first author and the journal name, year of publication, issues, number, and pages. This would be very short. I just put that. So either way, we can later on retrieve the main article. So when we are referencing, so that actually saves the time. If we start writing and referencing at the same time, normally people do. This takes a lot of time, and the idea which we are thinking may not be effectively presented because our focus will split into both writing as well as referencing, and that may not be give the effective result. So referencing normally we put at the end, but different ways we can use. But it is very difficult to reference because referencing is also very important. Like when the reviewer read the paper, they look at the reference, and if they do not find the reference appropriately being cited, and it just caused annoyance and they just reject the paper. So this is very important part, referencing. Now, the next is I just would like to highlight ethics. The ethical issue is also broad, but just briefly, I just like to talk about the issues. Normally, this comes with the publication process also. That's why only I include over here. So normally we disclose the conflict of interest. The conflict of interest means any sort of financial interest, interest related to the copyright, interest related to the instrument use. These might have been mention. It's better to mention in ethical issues. Usually in the online publications they have a format, we just need to read and we should say if we accept or we do not accept. Mostly journals they prefer to say accepted. So this is actually easily guided process actually in the submission process. Then we acknowledge the funding sources. This is the most important thing. If we have somebody sponsor our project, we need to acknowledge them. Or if somebody helps you in the research process, data collection, or the providing some sort of equipment, that also should be acknowledged. Like regarding the image and figure requirements, one idea is if we are taking figure or image from some source, we need to make sure that this has been approved from the main primary source. The other is if we use the image, in that case, we prior to sending to the publication, we need to get consent from the person who has given that photo. So like patients, we need to have separate consent from the patient. Normally in the journal publication, they do not ask for the document, but they expect us to say that this has been received. And then we also can provide supplemental information like data sets, videos. Currently, high impact journals, they expect to send all our data maybe in the Excel format or in the SPSS format, whatever is the format available. They want to look at the original data also. But usually this data set, these are the supplementary process may not require in majority of the cases. And then coming to the ethics approval, so this is usually initiated before the start of this project, and this is utmost important in the health research in the science. So this is called as an institutional review board approval. So this has to be mentioned that when we submit the paper, this has to be mentioned in paper as well as in the submission process, and we should say that the institutional review board approves the paper. And they are different with the clinical trial and different process, but I would not explain about this in detail much over here. Now coming to the online submissions, because all of the journal publication, I mean the most of the publications are online. Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's audible,
Yeah,
sir. Yes.
it's I just listen a bit of disturbance, so I just pause.
Okay, sir.
Okay, it's
Can
okay.
I
Yeah,
read to? Okay. Okay, sir. No problem,
yeah.
sir.
Okay, yeah. So because nowadays the submission is mostly majority is online, so I just briefly overview the online. So many publishers now offer a complete electronic submission and review processes, and that makes a lot of easiness and convenience nowadays. Because just sitting in computer, you can do everything. You get the online correspondence, online review, everything is online. So it is quite convenient and timely. So, but before online submission, I would like to uh, mention that make sure the checklists are being prepared. Like cover letter, normally what I used to do is I prepare cover letter, separate title page, separate abstract, separate manuscript, main body of the paper, separate table, separate figure, and if required, supplementary files, and separate copyright forms. So here I would just like to highlight cover letter and copyright forms. A cover letter means the letter we normally write to the editor why we are submitting this paper. So this is an opportunity when to get to convince the editor that why this paper is important. And we normally write in just few lines, 2 or maybe 3 lines. Um, the best part of the research, we mentioned the highlight the best part of the research and why we are submitting this paper, why this paper is worth publishing. So we just write this. And copyright form, normally copyright form, some journals expect to submit that copyright form initially, but majority of the journals, they ask for the copyright once paper are accepted. So I think we do not need to bother much about copyright issues. And the most of the journals they have already printed format of the copyright form. We just need to add the corresponding add the all the authors and provide signature. So that is also pretty simple. So we do not need to put a lot of stress on this part. Now I just quickly overview the review process before I wrap up this talk. So how the review process happens, I just like to briefly overview that. So normally the peer review process starts from the paper submission. We submit the paper to the journal, and after submission immediately you normally get receipt of confirmations in the email, and that this is normally sent to all the authors also. Then this paper is went to the reviewer. This usually goes to the reviewer, editor, sorry. Editor review it, and if editor sees that this is worth to send to the reviewers, they send to the reviewer. But if there is no new idea, editor can send rejection immediately. But editor usually send the reason behind the rejections. Maybe sometimes with just silly mistakes like grammatical stuffs, and they just send that we just correct and resubmit. So in that case, you might get the rejections, and that is the minor thing. But once the editor said that it has to is sent to the reviewer, usually it's sent to the two reviewers outside the institute, and the reviewers assess the paper and they send back to the editor again. And this is notified by, this is the responsibility of the editor, that again this notified to the author. So there are three possibilities from that. One is the rejections. So if reviewers say that this paper has no new ideas, they just reject it, and this information sent to the author. And if authors feel that this can have potential have a publications, they might ask for the further revision. And this further revision can be a major revision or minor revision. A major revision usually means there is a flaw in the maybe flaw in the data analysis, flaw in the methodology, a flaw in the scientific content. So usually they want to address that issue. So in that case, if there is a major revision, means we need to do a lot of work. And sometimes there are only few minor glitches are there that are not normally sent as a minor revisions. So minor revision means it is almost like I can say it is almost like acceptance. And the last one is the acceptance. So usually I just hear again a little bit noise. Actually, the acceptance, it is rare that the authors get acceptance letters in the first review. It is rarest of the rarest. So this is almost, I think, is rare to get acceptance in the first instance. At least the authors, they might receive a minor revisions before accepting. So once accepted, it goes to the production and publications. In that process, also our editor corresponds with the corresponding author. Corresponding author means the author who is responsible for taking care of all these submission and review process. So finally, I would just like to show this picture that the manuscript submission passes through the stages of the screening before it gets accepted. Sometimes it might be, we might feel that it's so much a process and it's so vague, and we might get the tired of uh, this. Maybe even you might feel inundating looking at these presentations, that this has to go through so much of details and process. But this is actually part of the screening process, so we can say that this is part of screening process. So but once you get the paper accepted, you really cherish that moment, that I can assure. And finally, normally in the manuscript submission, most of the journals, they prefer uh, uniformity requirement for the manuscript submission, that is biomedical journals, and they almost follow the same format. So I just provided the link over here, and this is accessible. And there is, normally we look at the NLM NIS government website. This is the universally accepted website. And normally nowadays when we apply for some higher studies or for the project or for this any grant or the scholarships, usually the the person are advised to make a profile on this NLM account. This NLM account is just for the listing of published papers, so to track the person's the publishing record. So this is the government site, and this is actually freely accessible, and we can populate this in this site. My final message, then coming to the final message, I encourage and I request, please start writing your paper. So initially you might feel that it's a bit slow and difficult, but later once you start writing, maybe the first paper would be a bit difficult. Once you get accustomed with writing the first draft, I'm pretty much sure that you can write second, third very quick and very fast. So like in my track record, it was the 2011 I started first writing, but later on I did not face any hitch and difficulties later on. So because you will you will get accustomed with the process, and it would be pretty much fast. So finally, publishing paper gives you sense of achievements and contributions. You feel that you are somewhere, you are success in the intellectual community. You will definitely feel satisfied. So finally, I would leave this for the discussions and question and answer with this final message from the Sir Franca is back on. He said that reading makes the full man, conference a ready man,